Biology. Characteristics and classification of living organisms. In this lesson, we will cover characteristics of living organisms, concepts and uses of classification systems, features of organisms. Welcome to the exciting and amazing world of living things. If you go outside and look around you, look at the sky, the soil, trees, plants, people, and animals. Nature is all around you, if you have the eyes to see it. Count how many living things you can see. What is it that makes living things different from things that are not alive? Biology is the study of living things. It deals with what all living things can do, how they do it, and why they do it. In biology, there is always a relationship between the structure of an organism, its function, and its adaptation to its function or environment. Biology also tackles important topics such as population, environmental issues, as well as health issues. If we look at the following picture, what makes living things different from non-living things? It is obvious that people are living things. Most of us realise that plants are living too. But what about a car? Cars need fuel, and can do many of the things that animals and plants can do. An individual living thing, such as an animal or a plant, is called an organism. The term living organism is usually used to describe something which displays all the characteristics of living things. There are 7 activities which make organisms different from non-living things. These are the 7 characteristics of living organisms. Nutrition. Living things take in materials from their surroundings that they use for growth or to provide energy. Nutrition is the process by which organisms obtain energy and raw materials from nutrients such as proteins, carbohydrates, and fat. Respiration. Respiration is the release of energy from food substances in all living cells. Living things break down food within their cells to release energy for carrying out the following processes. Movement. All living things move. It is very obvious that a leopard moves, but what about the thorn tree it sits in? Plants too move in various different ways. The movement may be so slow that it is very difficult to see. Excretion. All living things excrete. As a result of the many chemical reactions occurring in cells, they have to get rid of waste products which might poison cells. Excretion is defined as the removal of toxic materials, the waste products of metabolism and substances in excess from the body of an organism. Growth. Growth is seen in all living things. It involves using food to produce new cells. The permanent increase in cell number and size is called growth. Reproduction. All living organisms have the ability to produce offspring. Sensitivity. All living things are able to sense and respond to stimuli around them, such as light, temperature, water, gravity, and chemical substances. Learn these 7 characteristics of learning organisms. They form the basis of the study of biology. Each one of these characteristics will be studied in detail during the course. Whilst many other things carry out one or more of the above processes, all living organisms possess all of these characteristics. Classification is all about grouping. There are different ways in which organisms can be grouped, including their appearance, their DNA, and their behaviour. Do you happen to have a pencil case? If you do, empty it out onto the table. How would you group these items? You could group them by shape, for example. Long and thin could classify your pens and pencils, whereas short and fat could classify your rubber and pencil sharpener. You could group them by material. For example, plastic would be your pens and your ruler, whereas metal would be your pencil sharpener. If you have ever been to a library, you will know how much easier it is to find a book on a particular subject if the books are arranged in subject groups. When the librarian has a new book to add to the library, he or she will group it with books on a similar topic, according to a classification system. The use of the hierarchical classification system. Classification helps us to impose order and a general plan on a diversity of living things. Scientists have always tried to organise and classify the objects, including living organisms around them. Classification can be defined as grouping organisms according to their structural similarities. This means that organisms that share similar features are placed in one group. These groups are arranged from the largest group of organisms to the smallest group of organisms. The groups from largest to smallest are arranged as follows. Kingdom. Organisms are split into 5 kingdoms: plants, animals, fungi, protists and prokaryotes make up the 5 kingdoms. Examples of protists include Plasmodium and Amoeba. Examples of prokaryotes include bacteria such as Staphylococcus aureus. Phylum. Phylum lies in between kingdom and class. The phylum of an organism is a generalization based on the body plan of an organism. It is a classification that lies in between kingdom and class. The class of a human is Chordata. Class is another division in organisms. You may be familiar with some of the divisions of class. This includes mammals, fish, reptiles, and birds. We are mammals. Order. Order comes after class. Orders of organisms can be defined. Mammals are divided into bats, carnivores, rodents, and many other sections. Family. Families are made from classes. Families are a subdivision of class. Birds, for example, can be divided into families of pigeons, doves, and ducks, along with many more. Genus. The genus is a subdivision of families. Families can be further divided into the genus. An example of genus is Felix, that of domestic cats. Species. The species is the final division. We generally know what an organism is through its species. It is a final division of an organism. You can define species as a group of organisms that can reproduce to produce fertile offspring. The species is the smallest group of organisms. As you go through the classification hierarchy, you'll see that scientists have used broader features to put organisms into kingdoms, which is the largest group of organisms. When you move down towards the species, which are the smallest group of organisms, features are becoming specific. In other words, 2 organisms that belong to the same species share more features than those in the same kingdom, but in different species. A species can be defined as a group of organisms with similar features, and these organisms are capable of breeding and produce fertile offspring. You are probably aware of the fact that horses and donkeys belong to the same kingdom. Phylum. Class, order, family, as well as genus, but they are from different species. Therefore, if a donkey and a horse happen to breed, they produce an offspring called a mule. The mule is infertile, meaning that it cannot reproduce offspring because it is a product of organisms of different species. Classification hierarchy has many uses. First, it helps scientists to sort organisms in order. Second, it helps them to identify new organisms by finding out which group they fit. Third, it is easier to study organisms when they are sorted into groups. Carl Linnaeus, a Swedish botanist who lived from 1707 to 1778, introduced the hierarchical classification system that we have discussed so far. In addition to that, he gave each and every species a scientific name in Latin. The binomial system of naming species means giving organisms 2 names in Latin. The term binomial literally means two names. Bi, which means two, and nomial means name. Linnaeus derived scientific names from the genus and the species to which organisms belong. When writing a scientific name, the genus name is written first and starts with a capital letter, and the species name is written second and starts with a small letter. The scientific name ought to be printed in italics when typed and underlined separately when handwritten. The tiger belongs to the genus called Panthera, and the species called Tigris. Scientific names are universal because, for instance, every biologist will understand that Felis catus means house cat without resorting to the dictionary, no matter what language they speak. Can you think of the scientific names for some more organisms? Since the invention of microscopes and genome mapping, scientists now have more information about how organisms should be classified. We mentioned earlier that there are 5 kingdoms: animals, plants, fungi, protists, and prokaryotes. If we take the kingdom animals, this is divided into 2 main groups: vertebrates and invertebrates. Simple family trees can show how organisms are related. The diagram shows the evolutionary tree for vertebrates.